First of all, thanks and namaskar and good afternoon to everybody. So today in elite panel we have Professor Saitanand Joshi ji, our member secretary, Dr. K.N. Dixit, renowned archaeologist, Professor Sonawani, today's speaker, and to start with, I would like to give brief about the program which we annually organize. So, under the aegis of the Aditri department, the IGNC has initiated in 2017 a memorial lecture series in honor of the eminent archaeologist, art historian, and great humanist, Dr. Vishnu Sridhar Vakankar, popularly known as Haribau, the pioneer of rock art studies in India and recognized as the Pitama of rock art studies in the country. Dr. Vakankar has made enormous contributions, which include extensive fieldwork in India and abroad. He was involved in numerous archaeological surveys and explorations and also traced the basin of the now dry Saraswati riverbed, said to hold the secrets to much of Indian civilization. Dr. Vakankar was awarded the Padma Shri Award, one of the India's highest civilian honors in 1975. He was an active freedom fighter. IGNC, under this annual memorial lecture series, the first lecture was delivered by Dr. J.B. Deglurkar, renowned archaeologist and art historian, on Vishnu Sridhar Vakankar, a versatile genius. On 3rd April 2017, the second lecture in the series was delivered by Dr. Yashodhar Matpal, a multifaceted scholar and renowned artist, on Vishnu Sridhar Vakankar, the legendary Encyclopedia of Indian Art, on 3rd April 2018. And the third lecture was delivered by Professor A.P. Jamkhedkar, Chairperson, Indian Council of Historical Research, New Delhi, on Introduction of Mainstream Art of India, on 3rd April 2019. The present lecture, which was to be held on 3rd April 2020, was not held due to the well-known fact everybody knows that COVID-19. So we decided to hold it online. Today, Professor P.A. Sonawani, an eminent professor of archaeology and a rock art specialist, will be delivering a talk on Vishnu Sridhar Vakankar, the chief architect of rock art studies in India. This is the brief introduction to the lecture series. Now, I would like to introduce today's panelists also. First of all, I will introduce Shri K.N. Dixit ji, who joined Archaeological Survey of India on 9th March 1957 as an exploration assistant and retired as Joint Director General from Archaeological Survey of India in June 1994. In between, he served as Superintendent Archaeologist Antiquities, New Delhi, Eastern Circle, Calcutta, Southern Western Circle, Aurangabad, Delhi Circle, Delhi, and Excavation Bride, Delhi, and also he served as Director of Publications and Monuments and held the charge of antiquities and excavation and exploration from time to time. Indian Archaeological Society was brought to Delhi by Dr. S.P. Gupta and Shri K.N. Dixit in 1970. He was the chairperson of Indian Archaeological Society, New Delhi from 2015 to 18. And presently, he became Joint General Secretary of the Society from 2018 to till date. He is the main editor of journals like Puratattva, Purapravaha, History Today, and Journal of Indian Ocean Archaeology, published by Indian Archaeological Society. He was awarded by Dr. Vishnu Sridhar Vakankar Rashtriya Samman as the best archaeologist for the year 2011. Museum Association of India, Chennai, felicitated him with the Life Achievement Award in 2015. The Draupadi Trust, New Delhi, felicitated him for contribution as the best archaeologist of the 2014 at IISc New Delhi. Now, second in line, today's chairperson, Professor Sajidanand Joshi ji, who is presently member secretary of IGNC, is a great scholar of history and mass communication, as well as he is a writer, a poet, and an actor. He was the founder, vice chancellor of Koshobai Thackeray University of Journalism and Mass Communication, Raipur. He served as vice chancellor for 2 terms. He was also the founder registrar of Makhanlal Chaturvedi National University of Journalism and Communication, Bhopal. And later he served as dean academic in that institution too. He has written extensively on media, communication, history, culture, education policy, and other relevant issues. He has been delivering lectures on communication, gender sensitization, research for researchers, personality development, art and culture in prestigious institutions. He has edited the speeches of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji for publication division. He edited many prestigious publications. Some of the recent published works include Sachidanand Joshi ki Lokpriya Kahaniyan. His two poetry collections include Kuch Alp Viram, which was published in 2018, and Pal Bhar Ki Pehchan, which was published in 2019. His speeches have been compiled in 2 volumes titled Mera Desh, Mera Dharm. Now, today's speaker, Professor V.S. Sonawani, is a great scholar of archaeology, having 36 years of work experience on various aspects of prehistoric, protohistoric, and historic archaeology, including the discovery of more than 100 Harappan and Chalcolithic settlements and discovery of rock art shelters in Gujarat. Professor Sonawani retired as Professor of Archaeology from the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda, popularly known as MS University Baroda, and he was the Director of Field Archaeology at that university. Again, Professor Saraswati Sonawani was the coordinator of the UGC Special Assistant Program at the Department of Archaeology and Ancient History, MS University, Baroda. He has completed a project on the investigation of rock art of Western India with specific reference to Gujarat. And presently, he is working on symbolism of rock art in India. Professor Sonawani has presented number of papers in various national and international seminars, and almost 100 of his research papers were published in national and international journals. In recognition of dedication and contribution to the growth and development of the science of field archaeology in the country, he received Dr. Vishnu Sridhar Vakankar Award from the Indian Archaeological Society, New Delhi. So before I hand over the mic to today's chairperson, Professor Joshi ji, I would like to give a brief about today's program. So first, after handing over mic to our chairperson of the session, it will be followed by the lecture of Professor Sonawani ji, fourth memorial lecture of Dr. Vakankar. Then it will be followed by Ashirvachan by Dikshit ji, and that will be the chief guest address. Then Joshi ji will be giving the chairperson address. After that, we will be releasing the fourth memorial lecture. So, without wasting any time, may I request Professor Joshi ji to take over and start the proceeding. Thank you, sir.
Namaskar and very warm welcome to all the panelists and all the participants. We have more than 460 participants already joining this webinar, and that is a very good good sign, and it indicates how our scholars are interested in the study of rock art, which is definitely an encouraging sign. Honorable Dr. K.N. Dikshit ji, who is the chief guest and who always had blessed the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, and we are fortunate that he is always there to guide us in the pursuit of studies related to rock arts and other fields. Today's speaker, learned speaker, Professor V.H. Sonawani ji, who has been very kind throughout these days to be with us. He in fact, we would have loved him to speak in front of an active audience, but because of this COVID pandemic, we are constrained to have this on virtual mode. But the blessing in disguise is that had it been in Delhi, it would have been attended only by say 200, 250 people. But I am seeing that now 473 participants have joined, and they are all they are from different parts of the country. So that's a great thing. Everybody from India and abroad is joining this important lecture. So without wasting much of time, I would request our learned speaker, Professor Sonavane to deliver the fourth Dr. V.S. Memorial Lecture, and then after that we will follow the proceedings. So I'll request most humbly to Professor Sonavane to start his lecture.
Good evening, everybody. So, at the outset, I express my sincere thanks for the officials of the IGNCA. I am grateful to the authorities of the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts, New Delhi, for inviting me to deliver the fourth V.S. Wakankar Memorial Lecture under the aegis of its one of the prestigious annual lecture series instituted by the Adi Drishya Department. I feel truly honored to be here amongst the august gathering of learned scholars. I attach special importance to this occasion because this year's lecture forms part of the centenary celebration of the eminent archaeologist, art historian, and great humanist Padma Shri Dr. Vishnu Sridhar Wakankar. You are all aware that Dr. V.S. Wakankar Memorial Lecture has been delivered by three reputed scholars like Dr. G.B. Deglurkar, former president of the Deccan College Postgraduate and Research Institute, Pune; Padma Shri Dr. Yashodhar Mathpal, director of Folk Culture Museum at Bhimtal in Nainital; and Professor Arvind Jamkhedkar, chairman of Indian Council of Historical Research, New Delhi, who are known for their academic contribution in the field of archaeology, rock art, and art history. I have a tall order to follow of my predecessors and would like to take this rare opportunity to speak on Vishnu Sridhar Wakankar, the chief architect of crop art studies in India, before this learned gathering. For today's talk, I have deliberately selected the topic related to Wakankar's multifaceted interest in Indian culture. Heartiest congratulations are due for paying the highest tribute to him by initiating this lecture series by the Adi Drishya Department. A tall, slim figure with rugged features, a weather-beaten but innocent and perpetually cheerful face, high forehead, sparkling eyes, a booming voice, dressed simply in dhoti or trouser and a shirt and jacket that was Dr. V.S. Wakankar, Dada or Haribau to many of us who had the privilege of sharing close connections with him. He was possessed by a burning zeal for unraveling his country's past. One could easily be captivated by his transparent sincerity and passionate devotion to Indian history and culture. To be precise, he was a common human being of uncommon personality. He was born on 4th May 1919 at a place called Nimach in scholarly Brahmin family, a town in Malwa region of Madhya Pradesh. His traditional Brahmin upbringing instilled in him an interest in the Sanskrit studies and fine arts. Wakankar's academic interest covered not just prehistory and rock art, but virtually every branch of Indian history culture, and archaeology in general, and numismatics, epigraphy, paleography, and iconography in particular. As a full-time worker for the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, he initially traveled widely in Malwa region of central India. Forest of his state inhabited by Bhils, Gonds, and many other aboriginal people living in caves and rock shelters. Many of these were occupied at one or more stages by Stone Age hunters and gatherers who left record of their existence in the form of rock paintings. They profusely painted the walls and ceilings of their shelters depicting wild animals, hunting scenes, and variety of activities of their daily life. As these forest dwellers and the rock paintings shared common environment, Wakankar got ample opportunity to pursue his love and for exploring rock paintings. The rock paintings he had found in his occasion in life. For nearly 50 years, he walked through different hilly tracks, discovering several thousand painted rock shelters. Now, what is rock? Painted and engraved walls of caverns, rock shelters, and boulders present us an avenue to walk through archaic expressions of human societies as well as their cultural traditions. Rock art is regarded as purposeful modification of bare rock surface to produce preconceived forms and images both in paintings and engravings, often called pictographs and petroglyphs. Its antiquity, ranging from Paleolithic to historic period, is an important evidence of human creation through the changes in time and space. It is a global phenomena and found in many culturally diverse regions of the world. In the history of mankind, rock art is the only form of fine art having such a wide distribution and longevity. The spectrum of Indian rock art is vast in terms of their thematic and stylistic contents.
Disturbance.
In magnitude, vividness, and richness, it is outstanding and in some respect unique in the world, forming an important cultural assemblage. For a long time, after the discovery made in 1867 by Archibald Carlyle in the Kaimul ranges of Mirzapur district of Uttar Pradesh, the existence of rock art in India was an enigma and even its very antiquity was questioned. However, though its study crossed the threshold of archaeology rather late, after the discovery of Bhimbetka, the spectacular rock art site in Madhya Pradesh by Wakankar in 1957, declared as UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2003, brought a new momentum in archaeological studies, recognizing its archaeological potential. Wakankar's name is synonymous with Bhimbetka. His sustained research brought worldwide recognition and credibility for this branch of archaeological study. Among my several notable recollections of Wakankar, I would like to share the first interaction with him when I was the student of final year MA in archaeology in 1970. The lecture delivered by him in our department, that is Department of Archaeology and Ancient History of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. In those days, rock art was not a very familiar or popular subject. However, I found his lecture quite interesting and fascinating at the same time, as it dealt with one of our greatest surviving art treasures. Despite being one of the neighboring regions of Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat remained terra incognito in the field of rock art studies until 1970. To fill this lacuna in the archaeological wealth of Gujarat, while working on archaeology of the Panchmahals, one of the districts of Gujarat, for my PhD dissertation, I could able to establish the presence of rock art first in Panchmahals and then subsequently in other parts of Gujarat. This was just possible because of inspiration and motivation I received from Dr. Wakankar from time to time. One of the happiest moments in my life was when I discovered an unique fluted chert core of upper Paleolithic period with design engraved on its patinated surface found at Chandravati. This incident brought me in close contact with Wakankar because of its significance on the chronology of Indian rock art. Now, what is the significance of that engraved design on Chandravati core? Now, Chandravati is a small village situated about 7 kilometers south of Abu Road station in Siroi district in southern hilly region of Rajasthan. While exploring Chandravati in 1976, the capital of the Parmaras of the Arbud branch, an attempt was made to trace its earlier material relics also. As a result, a small triangular delta formed by the confluence of the river Banas and Chandravati revealed remains of the factory site forming a part of Upper Paleolithic assemblage. Now, this is one of that particular assemblage collected along with other artifacts from that site. Now, one of these fluted chert core found in the assemblage bears an engraving executed on one of its flat surfaces. You can see here the engravings, this part here on the flat portion. Now this is the close-up of the same core showing the design. The design appears to be like a spiral rhomboid, consists of a pair of parallel lines moving clockwise from the center, forming two spiraling arms. One of these arms bears a series of short diagonal lines, whereas the other one is significantly left plane. The engraved design is partially damaged, particularly the outgoing portion of the spiral rhomboid towards the flake periphery. Now, this particular portion was damaged because of the later flaking. This damage seems to have been caused by subsequent flaking of the nodule for taking out few parallel sided blade flakes by indirect pressure technique using an intermediate pitch. Now, those who are familiar with prehistoric terms, they would know what is this indirect pressure technique. As a result, a thin, soft coating of the incrustation bearing engraving was damaged while removing flakes from the point of punch rest. Therefore, it appears that the design was engraved on the nodule prior to its use as a core. Realizing the uniqueness of the design engraved on the core, which is first of its kind in the form of portable artifact, first I thought of Dr. Wakankar to know his reaction and comments on this new discovery. Simply, I sent him by post the photograph of the engraved core along with brief information on the location of the site and nature of collected stone tools. To my surprise, he responded so promptly, congratulating me for this wonderful discovery. To put it in his words, Vishwas, he was one of the very few persons who used to call me by my first name. You have done a great job. The things which I was looking for all these years, to date some of the rock paintings, precisely by correlating the archaeological evidence, you did it, from his personal letter written to me. On the basis of stylistic similarities between design engraved on the Chandravati core and identical intricate pattern often identified as labyrinthine or phosphine motifs composed of rhombic meanders and honeycomb patterns, along with their multiple derivations found in many Indian rock paintings, could be dated to either Upper Paleolithic or subsequent Mesolithic period, depending upon the nature and theme of rock painting. Thus, the discovery of an engraved core from Chandravati played a decisive role in resolving the problem of dating of those rock paintings containing identical designs. Highly impressed with the kind of discovery from Chandravati, realizing its importance in rock art studies, Wakankar suggested me to present a research paper in the first Aura Congress to be held at Darwin in Australia in August 1988. He said he will manage to get the funds for my participation in the Aura Congress at Darwin. What a kind gesture. I could go and present my paper, which was very well received in the international gathering of the rock art research specialists there. In fact, Robert G. Bednarik, who organized this first international congress of Australian Rock Art Research Association, so known as AURA, raised funds to invite a delegation of 7 Indian rock art researchers. I was one of them, to be headed by Dr. Wakankar, and expected he could play a key role in it. Unfortunately, Dr. Wakankar's health deteriorated while traveling in Singapore and suddenly succumbed to a heart attack on 3rd April 1988. A cruel twist robbed him of the satisfaction of witnessing the success of what he had set in motion over a period of decades. Now I'll be talking about why this design engraved on Chandravati core is so important and what is its significance. Why Dr. Wakankar was fascinated about that. The earliest rock paintings in Indian subcontinent show a strictly codified repertoire in their style and use of space, as they were the part of widely understood communication system. These paintings are distinguished by a very high degree of craftsmanship and a characteristic uniformity of intricate designs. The quality of application of the pigment in the form of fine and controlled lines seen in these early paints symbolize the beginning of rock art in India. In several paintings, these are seen covering wide, large space of virgin surface of rock shelters. Now, this is one of the picture of the intricate geometric pattern, particularly found at Shamala Hills in Bhopal. Shamala Hill is the part of the IJMRS complex. Now, similar identical designs of intricate patterns have been reported from many other sites like Bhimbetka, Childad, or Mahadev Hills, or Kathotia. So there are many other sites also, but then I have just taken selected ones here just to show. Now, none of these are executed as superimposed ones on any of the earlier paintings. That means these are the earliest paintings. In several shelters, these are found as body decoration of the large and uncommon depiction of wild boar, elephant, rhinoceros, and deer identified as deified animals. Now, particularly Professor V.N. Mishra and Yashodhara Matpal, those who have worked on Bhimbetka, they have identified these animals as deified animals. Quite often, square or rectangular shaped bodies of female figurines are also added on with such intricate geometric patterns. Now, what is interesting here, if you have seen the rock paintings, there the male figures are always shown in stick form, whereas female figures are quite often shown bulky. And because of this bulky body, there is a scope to decorate them. And so, in decorations, mostly you will see the same intricate geometric pattern as you found in the Chandravati core. Examples of independent or infilling of the body decorations cited above with the concentric or voluted geometric motifs thus draw our attention to the typical design engraved on the Chandravati core. Incidentally, it allows us to conclude that the type of motif executed on the Chandravati core and its variations found elsewhere in the numerous rock paintings clearly suggests some connotation in the connotations in the art of hunting-gathering prehistoric communities. It is surprising to find such community spanning over a great distance, covering a major portion of the Indian subcontinent. Erwin Neumayer, an Austrian scholar of rock art, has also reported similar rock paintings in Sri Lanka. This similarity reflects on a specific artistic tradition shared by all those whose pattern of living was comparable. From such uniform, one could infer design pattern exists even in the upper Paleolithic art of Mazin, unlike Ukraine in South Russia, where similar patterns have been found engraved on the mammoth ivory bracelet besides three mammoth ivory female figurines of late Pleistocene period. Now this is the picture of the bracelet of mammoth ivory, and you could see the similarity between the design engraved on the Chandravati core and the design engraved here. This is the line drawing of the same bracelet. And now the same place have also we have found three female figurines, but there also the engraving is almost striking or similar to that of Chandravati core. In the context of aforesaid data, it is possible to infer that such a stylistic and formal uniformity of the design was possible only through long and continuous development encompassing the ideological makeup of prehistoric society. Restricted use of the design confined to either deified animals and female body decorations is against conventional. The motif engraved on the Chandravati core and its variations found elsewhere in the rock art thus clearly denotes some religious connotations in prehistoric art. These symbolic expressions have not disappeared from the symbolic repertoire of the Indian culture. It has played an important role in the beliefs and subsequent cultures which evolved in the same environment. This evidence is further supported by the later manifestations of the various forms of yantras. These are those abstract forms which embody that energy, fertility, or Shakti, known and worshipped even today as Divine Mother. Now, here you can see various forms of tantric yantras. Now, particularly the Sri yantra or Kali yantra or Yoni yantra related to various goddesses. And all these yantras are composed of various forms of our triangles. Now, it is surprising to see the continuity of the same design in present days. Now, this is one of the Saura wall painting of Sauras, which are this one of the tribals of Orissa. And here the border of this painting has been decorated using this intricate geometric pattern found on the Chandravati core. This is the details of that border. Then this is floor or glazed tiles. I was watching one picture, baby, and there I could attract it to see this design, which is exactly similar to that of Chandravati core. Now, again, quite many floor tiles you will come across this type of intricate geometric pattern. Now, this bronze tortoise found in one of the gardens in Auckland, New Zealand. I was fascinated to see the design going up to that country. And now again, the same design you can see, I could see in one of the markets at Budapest in Hungary. And then finally, even you'll surprised to see that the attendance register kept in the Adidrishya department, the cover of that is again having the same design. I don't know whether Professor Malla is aware of this or not, but the same design which is there on the Chandravati core. Now I'll be talking about other aspects of Vakankar's interest. After gaining some experience while working on the rock art of Gujarat, I developed a knack for spotting rock paintings. While excavating at Walbipur in 1980, we were exploring the surrounding region to understand the history of the site. The granite outcrops lying between Walbipur and Bhavnagar attracted our attention as a possible area where one can look for rock paintings. So far, rock paintings in Gujarat are confined to granite outcrops only. With my intuitive approach, we discovered one of the most important and rare rock painting in the form of two sailing boats at a place called Chamardi. Now, this is the picture of the rock painting depicting two small sailing boats. The left one is the original painting, means in red color, and the right one is the line drawing of the faithful line drawing of the same. You can see all the details of structural details of rock sailing boats. Coincidentally, the same rock painting was also discovered by Dr. Wakankar while he was traveling to Bhavnagar during his tour to Gujarat. He was on the different mission, but granite outcrops at Chamardi could not escape from his keen eyes, much like how he discovered Bhimbetka earlier in 1957. In spite of his busy schedule, he could spend some time at the site and captured the picture depicting two small sailing boats and prepared the sketch on a small piece of paper showing all possible details. Now, this is the picture which was sketch made by Wakankar after visiting the site Chamardi. Before returning to Ujjain, he wanted to share this unique rock painting with me without knowing that we have already noticed it earlier. I have carefully preserved this precious sketch as the memory to mark his love and affection towards me. The line drawing which I have made with the help of professional draftsmen and quick sketch made by Wakankar is almost identical. Now, Chamardi is a small village at situated about 6 kilometers south of Walbipur on the Walbipur Bhavnagar highway in Bhavnagar district of Gujarat. The novel feature of Chamardi rock painting is the depiction of two sailing boats. The depiction clearly reveals structural as well as technological details of small seagoing vessels. The presence of chambers is marked by red alternate squares on the hull, suggesting its large carrying capacity. The ship has all the features of seagoing vessels used in maritime trade. A ship with a mast, a sail, and radar marks great technological advancement. The ornament upon the stem head, as seen on the smaller boat, is known to be a distinctive mark of the Kotias, a native craft of Saurashtra and Kutch. Chamardi is located very close to Goga, one of the active ports on the Saurashtra coast. Walbi, the capital of Maitrakas, played very important role in maritime trade. Now, this I am just showing because of why this particular place was chosen for preparing or making this rock paintings of sailing boats. The picture showing sailing boats is painted on a wall of the rock shelter, and hence it is not within the datable archaeological context. Despite this shortcoming, circumstantial evidence of historical data on Walbi's trade contacts with China and Roman world provides a reasonable base to assign this rock painting to the Maitraka period, that is 6th to 7th century AD. This representation has generated interest among the rock art specialists and those working on ancient shipbuilding technology and maritime activities. It may not provide a nautical researcher with reliable technological information, but it is certainly an interesting example of an object or image whose deceptive similarity reveals a conceptual richness. This is the only rock painting of seagoing vessel found in India so far. Now I am going to talk about another interest of Vakankarji's. Wakankar was essentially a self-taught archaeologist. Despite having no formal education in archaeological excavation techniques, during 2 decades as a director of excavations and museums at Vikram University, Ujjain, he excavated a number of archaeological sites of different cultural periods in Madhya Pradesh. Important among these are Maheshwar, Naudatoli, Manoti, Aura, Kaitha, Bansor, and Dangwada. Now, this is the picture of a team who participated in the Maheshwar excavation in 1957. Now, one could easily identify where is Dr. Wakankar is standing here. Now, this is Dr. Wakankar in white attire, particularly dhoti and that. And the other person in white dress is Professor B. Subbarao, the founder professor of our department. In the group, you can see Professor Sankalia and other. Mostly, it's a team from Deccan College, Pune, MS University, Baroda, and Ujjain University. Now, this is the picture of Wakankarji's visit to Inamgaon. It seems very curiously Wakankarji is observing something which Sankalia Sahib is showing to him. And also, this is the group picture of delegates at the Ramayan conference held at Bhopal. Now, of these findings from the archaeological sites, Naudatoli, Kaitha, and Dangwada have thrown a flood of light on the first permanently settled inhabitants of Malwa. The painted pottery and some of the copper tools showed that these first farmers of Malwa were inheritors of the legacy of the Harappan people of Gujarat. However, among these, the Yagna Kundas associated with terracotta figurines of Mother Goddess and triple shrine is most outstanding discovery of Dangwada excavation. It is proved beyond doubt that the Chalkritic people of Dangwada perform yagnas as testified by sacrificial pits. Here, I would like to cite supporting evidence from Wagad, one of the Harappan sites in Gujarat. The discovery of 4 circular clay-lined fire pits deserves special mention here. Of these, 3 bigger ones with saggar base were dug into the natural soil, orienting north, south, and western direction. They were arranged in a triangular form. The 4th one, cylindrical in shape with flat base, was dug little inside between the southern and western ones. All of them were internally neatly plastered with cow dung paste mixed with clay. These pits contained ash, possibly of cow dung cakes. The inner clay-lined walls of larger fire pits were subjected to intense firing of a prolonged period. In the absence of bones or any kind of industrial material, these fire pits seems to have been used for some kind of ritualistic purpose. It is also quite interesting to note that northern and western fire pits have been provided with a square raised mud platforms, perhaps meant for yajman or host, and officiating purohit or priest who perform the ritual. Now here you can see these 2 slightly raised platforms here and as well as here. So one could be for the purohit and one could be for yajman to perform the ritual there. This is the close-up of one of the fire pits. You can see how neatly they are plastered from inner side And this is one what is known as utkar, a cylindrical with flat base. Now, anything which is left out after the sacrificial is over, that can be placed here. Officiating, offering to the fire was well-known practice in the yagnas. The Vedic text mentions three fires, namely Garhapatya, Ahavaniya, and Dakshinatya. Along with this, there is also a provision for one more circular pit, smaller in size and located in the center, known as Utkar in the traditional Vedic Yagnashalas. In this context, it is worth noting that the Vedic fire altars were made of packed earth and not of bricks. Also, square or rectangular seems to be a shape of Vedic altars, while circular ones are of pre-Vedic tradition. Therefore, a kind of Harappan fire altars, particularly found at Wagad, does show a pattern of sacrifice which many practicing Hindus will recognize as something similar to their own tradition. To sum up, there is every reason to see in the Harappan religion many features of Vedic and subsequent Indian Hindu tradition. Therefore, Harappan culture is likely to have contributed to the stream of Sanatan Dharma or the traditional religion of the present day Hindus. Thus, the presence of sacrificial fire altars at Wagad, a rural Harappan settlement in Gujarat, not only supports to the sketchy evidence found at Harappan urban centers like Kalibangan, Banawali, and Lothal, but confirms its validity because of its non-ambiguous nature. Dr. Wakankar's dedication and commitment to the cause of rock art research, dissemination of knowledge, and preservation of this unique body of archaeological heritage won him national and international recognition. He left a great legacy of rock art research in India. A man of simple disposition stands tall among his colleagues and is unrivaled in his contribution to the rock art research in India. His work continues to be a source of inspiration to most researchers, both young and old. He inspired generations of students who have carried forward his vision of rock art studies in India. Dr. Wakankar's sustained research on rock art and his scholarly lectures and publications in reputed journals in India and abroad won him a respectable position for Indian rock art. Inspired by his pioneering work today, number of Indian and foreign scholars are investigating in the field of rock art. His passion for rock art was unremitting. As a result of his seminal contribution to Indian archaeology, he was awarded with Padma Shri in 1975, one of the highest India's civilian honors. Dr. V.S. Wakankar, the Pitamaha of rock art studies, no wonder is regarded as the chief of rock art studies in India. Now, this is the picture of one of our annual Rock Arts Society of India's annual conference held at Ujjain in November 1999. Particularly, the conference was hosted by Wakankar Shodh Sansthan. And here you can see Srimati Lakshmi Wakankar, or Vahini we used to call her. She is addressing the validatory function. And on the dais, you can see Dr. M.N. Deshpande, former Director General of Archaeology. Then Sadhu Mahajan, ex-speaker, myself, Giriraj Kumar, and Dr. Badam. So this was the legacy what we were sharing in that conference, and she talked a lot about Wakankar's interest. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sonavane ji. Uh, it was really a wonderful talk, so much of information, full of research, and I think many of us were astonished to see the variety, the vastness of the information and knowledge which you have exhibited in your very scholarly presentation. So we all are grateful to you, sir, for your scholarly presentation. And I would now request Dr. K.N. Dikshit ji, who is our chief guest, to bless us, to say a few words on this occasion. Dr. K.N. Dikshit, sir.
I'm thankful to authorities of the IGNCA, especially Dr. Joshi and Mallaji for inviting me as the chief guest of this function. And in fact, I was very happy because after passing my MA in 56, when I went for the field training at Ujjain, I am one of those privileged people here who had a meeting as early as 1957 in January at Ujjain with Wakankar. He came there along with Professor Sankalia, Subbarao, and one of my class fellow, Mahapatro. And after that, we had several meetings. So immediately, I was very happy to accept this invitation. And the speaker, Professor Sonavane, is well known to me. And while going through his lecture, I must congratulate him that for narrating how the development of the rock art in the country has taken place from 1967 till date. And in between, the contribution made by so many scholars in the country, and especially Wakankar, who was one of the person who has given, to be very thing, a kind of a research approach to this subject, which was not there in the country. Later on, it was followed by Matpal also, Jagdish Gupta also, Man Burma also, Tiwari also, and foreigners also. But the lecture in which he has shown how the development has taken place, especially in Gujarat and central India, where the tradition of rock art, whose antiquities goes back to the upper Paleolithic times, to Mesolithic, and to say even in the recent years by the tribal art, one can, to be very frank, can visualize that the paintings, the engravings left on the surface by our ancestors, that shows how the hunter-gatherer thinking was and how the civilization where we are sitting today has advanced. And the study of rock art, which was not a regular subject till many years by the working of so many universities, scholars and individuals, it has become a main subject in a few universities. And I congratulate once again IGNCA for organizing this lecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dikshit ji. You have been always a great source of inspiration and support for the IGNCA, and we heavily bank on your guidance. Thank you very much again for blessing us on this important occasion. I would like to add only a few points. Almost everything has been covered by Professor Sonavane in his lecture related to rock art. But I would like to bring it to the notice of the audience that rock art was not the only area in which we remember Wakankarji. He had a personality which incorporated so many dimensions of knowledge. And whenever we remember Wakankarji, we only remember him for the contribution he had in the field of rock art. But since we are approaching 21st of June, I would like to bring it to the notice of all the audience that the important invention of Wakankarji was a place known as Dongla. Dongla is a place near Ujjain, and we all know that Ujjain had been seat of astronomical studies, and Ujjain had one of the oldest observatories, like the one which we had in Jantar Mantar in Delhi. We had the similar observatory in Ujjain, and Ujjain has been an important seat of learning as far as astronomy is concerned. And the tropical of Cancer was supposed to be routing through Ujjain, and in years that has slightly shifted towards Dongla, which is a few kilometers away from Ujjain. And mm, uh, on 21st of June every year there is a time at around 12, in fact at 12, where we do not find any shadow. The sun is exactly perpendicular and you don't find shadow. It becomes a sort of a pilgrimage, a place to visit by a large number of tourists on that day. I don't know how many of us would be able to visit this year because of the solar eclipse, but it is an important occasion every year on 21st of June. The government of Madhya Pradesh has also established an observatory at Dongla, and it is dedicated to Varaha Mihir, and it is known as Varaha Mihir Observatory. But the point which I would like to put it forward is that during the centenary of Vakankarji, would it not be a befitting tribute to the legendary scholar that we start stressing upon the theory which he propagated related to the establishment of time theory? Why we always acknowledge the time related to Greenwich Mean Time, which does not have any relevance to the solar movement, and it does not fall under the line of Cancer or the line of Scorpion, but Greenwich Mean Time does not is not relevant to Indian context. Vakankarji propagated that because of its positioning, Dungla is an ideal place for calculation of time, and he in fact stressed that instead of GMT we should now call it DMT, that is Dungla Mean Time. So I mean, now since India has a rich treasure of scholars, bright young scholars working in different fields, and we should not hesitate in trying to propagate this ideology throughout the world, that we have India had the most scientific way of calculating time, and Vakankarji in his studies has established this. So why can't we now take up this issue? Uh, this would be a great tribute to the legendary scholar Vakankarji. Another important study which Vakankarji undertook was the Saraswati civilization studies, and which has in fact transformed the philosophy, transformed the history as far as India's civilization and lineage is concerned. And his excavations related to Saraswati civilizations have not been brought to the knowledge of the people at large. I know Dikshit ji has been guiding us to do that kind of a study, and IGNCA is in process of bringing out a publication on Saraswati civilization under the guidance of Dikshit ji, which will be brought out very soon. And we would be coming up with some astonishing facts related to the civilizational studies based on these studies conducted by Sri Vakankarji. In fact, if those studies are taken as a research topic by most of the students related to anthropology, related to archaeology, related to history, I think we can really transform the concept of studying India's civilization, and not only India's civilization, but the civilization lineage of the entire world. So these two important works of legendary scholar Vakankarji uh, have not been discussed the way they should have been discussed. And I take this opportunity to call all the scholars who have gathered here. I could see 530 scholars, and when I was seeing their profile, I was astonished to see the variety of intellectual wealth which is available on this Zoom platform today. We can really push forward these things for the broader knowledge of the world, and can in fact change. So in place of GMT, if it is DMT, that is a dream which would come true and would be a tribute to Vakankarji. Another excavation sites, we know Vakankarji has excavated more than 1,500 sites, and whenever his name comes only a few sites, I was happy to see a couple of important information which Sonavane ji has covered in his lecture. But another site which is in the Chambal Valley known as Kaitha has not been, dealt the kind of importance it should have got, and it has not been dealt with that kind of sincerity and seriousness. So even that is also an important aspect which we should look into. An unassuming personality, uh, somebody who lives very close to Vakankarji, even he or she may not realize what kind of a magnanimous personality he was, and what depth of intellect, what depth of knowledge he had. One of the greatest of great ethologists, the greatest of great archaeologists, greatest of great scholars of history, a beautiful painter, a very nice visualizer of things. He used to sketch the things with effortless ease, and his sketches are very popular. Many of his students possess his sketches even today. So I think it is the right time to start studying Vakankarji's contribution all over again in his centenary year, so that the different facet of his uh, magnanimous personality are brought to the knowledge of the entire world, and uh, and we would feel privileged to tell the world that we had a person known as Vishnu Sridhar Vakankar, alias Haribhau Vakankar, who not only changed the entire concept of the history, but also changed the concept of the time and civilization as far as the entire world is concerned. So I would thank the honorable panelist Dikshit ji, Sonamne ji, for really blessing this occasion. 4 years back, we started the Vakankar Memorial Lecture in the division of IGNCA known as Adi Drishya Department, and we thought that it would be the befitting tribute to the legend if we start an annual lecture series in his honor. I'm happy that we are continuing that legacy thanks to the efforts put up by the division head, Professor B.L. Malla, who is an eminent scholar, and his contribution in the field of rock art is well known to everyone. And he has really put his heart and soul into this entire division to bring back the study of rock art in a main stream of knowledge and considerations. We are also trying built up a consensus so that there can be an act, or there can be a legal tool through which we can preserve the rock art shelters in India, and not only rock art shelters in India which are available in the remote sites, but also which are available in relatively urbanized sites which are in great danger due to rapid construction and blasting and excavations. So if that tool is available, uh, we can definitely preserve the rock art, which is also available in a relatively urbanized area. We are also trying to build up awareness among the younger generation students. I would urge all the scholars who are present here on this webinar that they should suggest how we can popularize this concept among the students who are studying in either schools, higher secondary classes, or in years of college, so that enough awareness is generated amongst the younger generation as far as India's strength and treasure of rock arts is concerned. I have another task to do is to release the lecture which Professor Sonavane ji has given, and I would take this opportunity to release this. This is there. This I am releasing, and Malla sir is also having one copy, so we are releasing, and it would be also available in e-version. That would be sent to you, whosoever wants that can email us, and we will be happy to send it across. On behalf of the IGNCA and my personal behalf, I again thank Dr. Dikshit, Professor Sonavane, uh, Malla Sahab for putting up a great show, Priya Sharma from NEGD, to host this entire event, and all the 505 participants who have gathered here. My best wishes to you all. Over to Mallasa.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words and always guiding us.